You know exactly who I'm talking about. The person who's borrowed money from you 3, 4, maybe 10 times and never paid back a single dollar. They've got new clothes, went out last weekend, bought concert tickets. But your money vanished into thin air. Here's what you need to know. They're not forgetting. They're not even feeling guilty. There's a specific psychology that makes this possible. Once you understand it, you'll realize you've been playing a game you were never going to win. Welcome to Money Archetype, where we decode the hidden psychology behind financial behaviors. Today, we're diving into one of the most frustrating patterns in human relationships, the chronic borrower who never repays. This person is in your family, in your friend group, maybe in your relationship. They're not just irresponsible. There's a specific psychological architecture that makes this behavior possible, and it's way more complex than you think. Let's break it down. First, we need to understand something crucial. People who borrow and never repay don't experience debt the same way you do. In your mind, borrowing creates an obligation, a psychological weight you carry until it's resolved. But in their mind, that weight doesn't exist. Psychologists call this moral licensing, the mental process where people justify behavior that would normally create guilt. They've constructed a narrative where borrowing from you isn't really debt. It's something else entirely. Let me translate what's actually happening in their mind when they ask to borrow. 1. You have more than me. In their mind, the inequality justifies the transfer. You can afford it. They can't. So the transaction isn't a loan, it's a redistribution. This is called equity theory violation. They believe they're owed compensation for life's unfairness and you're the bank. 2. You'd want to help me. They've reframed the entire interaction. This isn't about money anymore. It's about whether you're a good person, a good friend, a loyal family member. If you truly cared, you wouldn't want it back. Asking for repayment becomes the selfish act, not the borrowing. 3. I'd do the same for you, except they wouldn't, or couldn't. But in their mind, hypothetical generosity counts. Psychologists call this symbolic reciprocity, the belief that good intentions equal action. Research found that people who chronically fail to repay debts show significantly lower activity in brain regions associated with guilt and obligation. It's not that they're ignoring the debt. They literally don't feel it the same way you do. Not all chronic borrowers are the same. They fall into distinct psychological categories, and recognizing which type you're dealing with changes everything. Type 1. The victim. Everything bad happens to them. The car broke down. The job fell through. The emergency always comes, and it's never their fault. This person has an external locus of control. They believe life happens to them. In their mind, they're not irresponsible, they're unlucky. And you're not a creditor, you're a lifeline. Asking for your money back feels like punishing them for circumstances beyond their control. Type 2, the optimist. They absolutely intend to pay you back next week, next month. When the big thing comes through, they're not lying, they genuinely believe their own timeline. This is optimism bias in action. The tendency to overestimate future resources and underestimate future obstacles. They borrow based on the person they imagine becoming. Type 3, the entitled. This is the most dangerous type. They don't just fail to feel obligation, they feel owed. Maybe you have more money. Maybe you got lucky. Maybe they've decided your success is somehow unearned. Psychologists call this hostile attribution bias, the tendency to perceive others' advantages as personal attacks. In their twisted logic, keeping your money is them taking back what should have been theirs all along. Type 4, the avoider. They borrowed. They know they should repay. But the shame is so overwhelming they'd rather ghost you. This is cognitive avoidance, the psychological mechanism where people escape uncomfortable emotions by escaping the situation entirely. Every day they don't repay makes the shame worse, which makes them avoid you more, which makes repayment even less likely. It's a shame spiral that guarantees the debt never gets resolved. Type 5, the user. They're not confused. They're not ashamed. They're strategic. They've identified you as a resource to be extracted. This is pure instrumental relationship orientation. They categorize people by utility, not connection. You're not a friend. You're a bank with weak loan policies. And they'll keep borrowing until you finally cut them off. Here's the brutal truth. The closer the relationship, the less likely you'll ever see your money again. Why? Because intimacy creates what psychologists call communal norms, the unspoken rules that govern close relationships. In communal relationships, we don't keep score. We help without expecting immediate return. We operate on trust and generosity. This is beautiful until someone weaponizes it. Chronic borrowers exploit communal norms while maintaining exchange norms for themselves. They expect you to operate like family, generous, forgiving, not counting, while they operate differently. A study found that people are significantly less likely to repay informal loans from close friends than from acquaintances. Not because they value the friendship less, but because they value it more. The friendship becomes the repayment in their mind. Your continued tolerance becomes proof that the debt doesn't really matter. That's why they can borrow from you and still expect you to show up to their birthday. Still expect emotional support. Still expect the friendship to continue unchanged. Because in their psychological framework, the money and the relationship exist in separate categories. But let's flip this. Why do you keep saying yes? First, you're afraid of being the bad guy. They frame the ask so you can't say no without feeling cruel. They would say something like, I wouldn't ask if it wasn't serious. I have nobody else. I thought I could count on you. These are psychological traps. Saying no becomes a moral failure in your mind. Second, you're investing in the fantasy. You keep lending because you believe this time will be different. This time they'll change. This time they'll prove they value the relationship. Psychologists call this the sunk cost fallacy. You've already lost so much. Surely the breakthrough is coming. Third, you're maintaining the relationship. And here's the saddest part. You're afraid that if you stop being useful, they'll disappear. So you keep paying not for repayment, but for connection. You've become a lender to stay a friend. Fourth, you're repeating a pattern. Maybe you grew up being the caretaker, the fixer, the responsible one. Being needed feels like being loved. So you confuse financial exploitation with intimacy. Now here's how you end this cycle. Stop lending even small amounts. Not because you're mean, but because you're done participating in a pattern that disrespects both of you. Say it clearly. I don't lend money anymore. It's a personal policy. No explanation needed. Separate the money from the relationship. If they disappear when the loans stop, they were never your friend. They were your client. That hurts, but it's information. Grieve the money you've already lost. It's gone. Chasing it keeps you emotionally hostage. Release the debt, release the hope, release the fantasy that they'll suddenly become someone different. Recognize the pattern as data. Someone who borrows without repaying is showing you exactly who they are. Believe them, not once every single time. People who borrow and never repay aren't just financially irresponsible. They're relationally irresponsible. They've built a psychological framework where your resources exist for their relief. And they genuinely don't see the problem. You can't fix them. You can't shame them into change. You can only stop participating. If this hit home, subscribe to Money Archetype for more psychology behind the money behaviors that shape your life. Your boundaries aren't cruelty. They're clarity. Thank you for watching.